The name Aristotle Onassis may be an unfamiliar one, especially to some of the younger viewers of this channel, but he is by far one of the most iconic figures of the 20th century. The way he lived, the way he loved, the way he dressed, the way he earned, and the way he spent his money is nothing short of legendary. In today's video, we are going to explore the life of Aristotle Onassis to see what we can learn, both from his successes and from his downfalls. And we'll also take a detailed look at the way he dressed and see what you can learn from his signature style. Hello, my name is James, and I am on a mission to create a generation of gentlemen. Aristotle Onassis would become the richest man in the world, and the way he lived his life was nothing short of a movie. But like all good movies, it wasn't smooth sailing for the life of Aristotle Onassis, particularly in his early years. Although he was born to a wealthy trading family, they had all of their possessions and their freedom stripped away by war, leaving Aristotle as a young man with absolutely nothing. He decided to make his way to Buenos Aires, Argentina. In the 1920s, this was a city of great opportunity and artistic expression, earning the name the Paris of South America. Aristotle got a relatively low-paying job as a telephone operator, and by night he would wash dishes in a local restaurant. But while working as a telephone operator, he began to eavesdrop on important business calls. And through this eavesdropping, he began to notice opportunities to make deals and to buy things at a lower price because, frankly, he had this insider information. After a couple of early wins in business, he began a tobacco importing company. And then he moved his attention to shipping, which would be how he would make his grand fortune. Aristotle's early life shows us that nobody is coming to save you, and you have to make your own fortune in this world, even if everything is stripped from you completely unfairly as it was for his family. There's no reason you can't climb your way back to the top through grit, ambition, and intelligence. Probably the secret to Aristotle Onassis's business success was he was able to spot opportunities that other people didn't notice. The way he absorbed information and the creative way he looked for solutions was what made him the richest man in the world. And after World War II, he began buying up surplus ships at extremely low prices, knowing that the man who controls how goods move pretty much controls the world. He also took a very, let's say, creative approach to laws about tax loopholes, offshore ownership, international waters, and he did often find himself perhaps in trouble with the law. And that's because Onassis had the ambition to play the game at a global level. He bought his own island, Scorpios, his famous yacht, the Christina O, and even an airline, Olympic Airlines. Aristotle himself said the secret of business is to know something that nobody else knows. With his style and persona, Aristotle Onassis was certainly a playboy gentleman tycoon. Although the business world that he was involved in was high pressure and dirty, he preferred to surround himself with beauty and luxury. He was known for wearing a double-breasted suit. Possibly the reason for this choice was because he was of a smaller stature, and he did carry a bit of weight around his midsection, so the double-breasted jacket simultaneously gave him a more imposing presence, yet covered up that midsection. Onassis was loyal to his favorite tailors, brands, and shoemakers for his signature look. He was always seen in a double-breasted jacket by Caraceni, custom tortoiseshell eyeglasses or sunglasses by Francois Pinton, loafers made by John Lobb, and of course his thick head of silver hair and deep Mediterranean tan. In many ways, the way he dressed reflected his attitude in business. He had a touch of the old world, old money elegance, but then with a confident, brash European showmanship. When you look at the outfits of Aristotle Onassis, you'll notice that the way he wore his outfits was actually rather sloppy and careless. His ties were always wonky, his pocket squares were just thrown in haphazard. He certainly had that rakish sprezzatura taken to an extreme. In fact, Onassis wore his clothes with a kind of laid-back disdain that might have come from the chip he had on his shoulder about coming from a working-class family, being a peasant, as he used to say. But even though he wore them with this kind of disdain and laziness, that only made him look all the more elegant, because it created the impression that he didn't need to try. He didn't need to be perfectly buttoned up. He was powerful and competent as he was. You could compare his style to that of Gianni Agnelli, but I would say that Onassis' style was much more carefree, and in a way less affected and much more masculine and powerful. Dressing in this somewhat rakish, disheveled way actually communicated a message of ultimate confidence and ultimate power. If there was one thing Onassis loved more than money, it was people. But he collected people in a kind of superficial, shallow sense of the word, caring perhaps more about the names of the people on his yacht than the emotional attachment he had to them. The Christina O was the scene of crazy parties, including guests like Winston Churchill, who was a frequent traveler, and Maria Callas, at the time the world's most famous opera singer. But Callas and Onassis would become much more than just friends, becoming lovers, even though both of them were married at the time. It's hard to express just how big the story was of Maria Callas, this world-famous Greek-American opera singer, and then Aristotle Onassis, the most rich man in the world, also Greek, having this love affair. But Onassis' affection for Callas wouldn't last too long, as his head was eventually turned by the wife of the US President, JFK's Jackie Kennedy. Now, by all accounts, it's very likely that Onassis began to seduce Jackie before her husband passed away. And when that fateful day in Dallas came, Onassis saw it as simply an obstacle being removed. And very soon after, the two were married. We will never really know what Onassis' motivations were for marrying Jackie, but many people who were close to him believed that he was A, trying to gain a better reputation and more influence in the United States, and B, he simply loved being the husband of the most famous woman in the world. The two would remain together until his death, although their marriage was not always a happy one. Although Onassis had the deepest pockets in the world, Jackie struggled to stay within her $100,000 a month allowance. And it was never happy families between Jackie and Aristotle's 2 children from his previous marriage. For all of his money, for all of his women, for all of his fame, Aristotle's life was shadowed with darkness and tragedy. And that's why, as men, I believe we need to learn both from his successes and his blind spots. In business, he found himself accused of tax evasion, shady deals, dodging shipping regulations, and overall being a manipulative businessman. He was clearly obsessed with control. Control was his driving force. He wanted to control not only his industry and money, but he also wanted to control and collect people. His only son, Alexander, died at the age of 25 during a plane crash, which left Aristotle without an heir to his family's empire. And Alexander's death had a profound effect on his father. He never really recovered from the tragedy. Aristotle died 2 years later with no heir to the family fortune and an empire that quickly crumbled without its captain at the helm. As he said himself, millions do not add up to what a man needs out of life. Aristotle was a modern-day conqueror. He conquered business, he conquered women, he conquered the world's attention. But he clearly never found true happiness or fulfillment. On our journeys to win success, or maybe even fame and fortune if that's what you desire, we can learn many lessons from the intelligence, the tenacity, the ambition of Onassis. But we must remember not to suffer from the same blind spots. Don't let our love for money and power overshadow the time we spend with our families and the relationships we build with those who love us the most. I would love to hear from you in the comments. What are your thoughts about Aristotle Onassis? Was he a good man who perhaps let his ambitions get the better of him? Or do you believe he is a flawed character who should serve more as a warning than a lesson? I greatly look forward to reading your responses, and I'll see you in the next video.